Hi, my name is Doug Rell, and I'm a grateful alcoholic. And I want to thank Dave for that rousing introduction. And also, if anybody runs into Joe, I want to thank him for inviting me to talk tonight. This is the fourth time in a row I've been invited to speak to by somebody who wasn't at the meeting where I went to speak. I get the impression they're trying to punish the people who are there or something. I like doing this. This is a fun thing for me to do. I wanted to be the speaker at the first meeting I ever went to, but I was a little drunk that night, and so nobody really said, "Hey, let's get the drunk guy to talk." So I don't know. I love being an alcoholic, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't know if I heard somebody say that when I was new, but if I had, I would have thought, "What is wrong with you?" Because I didn't care about being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. It really didn't appeal to me. It looked like Lamesville to me, and I was just a little too cool for that. And I really, really didn't want to be an alcoholic. In fact, I was looking for ways not to be an alcoholic, and I think a lot of us do that. But I mean, I've had my life is a piece of cake in Alcoholics Anonymous compared to what it was when I was drinking and using. I met my wife in Alcoholics Anonymous. Most of the friends, I still have some friends that I had when I was drinking and using, but I had to get them back. I had to get I had to get my family back. And I've done all that. I tell you, there was a time my daughter's mother and I separated when my daughter was about 3 years old, and then we were divorced, and she remarried, and she married a good man, and I stayed friends with him, and I was always was a part of my daughter's life, but I was a drunk, and I was over at their house one time, and my daughter's stepfather said to me, pulled me aside, and he said, "Doug, you're welcome in our home anytime, sober. Don't come over here drunk anymore, because you make it hard on Star, on my daughter." And it's one of those truths, that just hits home. And I knew he was right. I had no intention of going over there and making my daughter's life hard. I went over there so I could be part of her life, but I was drunk, and I remember leaving that house that night and thinking, what's the matter with you? This man who isn't even her father cares more about her than you do. And I was driving home, and I started to cry, thinking about what a miserable father I was, and how the stepfather was a better father than I was, and why couldn't I go over there sober, and I was just driving, and I was crying so hard I could hardly see. And what I did, the only thing I knew how to do for that pain was I stopped at a liquor store and got a bottle of whiskey. And see, I'm in a place where people understand that. Those people out there, they heard that, would say, well, if alcohol was such a problem, why would you try to solve it by having a drink? Because that's the only solution I had. That's all. That's the only solution I had. And that was years before I got sober. When I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't want to be here, really, but I didn't, like I said, I didn't have any place to go. I mean, 2 or 3 people at the first meeting that I ever went to came up to me, walked up to me deliberately, and said, "Keep coming back." And that wasn't happening to me. I remember driving home from that first meeting thinking, well, all those people came up to me and said, "Keep coming back." Well, they clearly see my potential. Little did I didn't know you said keep coming back to everybody. Little did I know that I know now. I mean, keep coming back can be an insult. We use it like that all the time. If you're new here, I'm going to bet that you probably have some very good ideas about how to improve AA. We usually do, and if you do have some ideas on how to make improvements to AA, find somebody with some double-digit sobriety and pull them aside and tell them your ideas. And chances are they'll say, keep coming back. You know, what I did when I was new is I started looking for ways to be different. Ways that I wasn't, if I was an alcoholic, and I believe that I probably was, because I drank like an alcoholic and I was having a lot of problems, and a lot of the problems that people talked about in AA meetings I was having. I lost a lot of jobs over alcoholism, and you know, I didn't show up for things. I was drunk, I'd pass out, I'd have blackouts, you know, all the things that people talked about, but I still thought that if I was an alcoholic, I was some different kind of alcoholic. And what I did was I started looking for the ways that I was different. And I didn't know I was doing that. You know, I mean, if somebody had said, no, you're trying not to identify. Oh, no, 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 no. But what I would do is I would listen to what people said, and I'd, and anybody that had a different story than mine, I'd say, yeah, see, that's different. I'm not like that. And I hear people say, I started drinking when I was 9 or 10 years old. Roki said tonight, started drinking when I was 13. Well, see, that wasn't my story, and I want to thank my friend Roki for coming out here with me. I was hoping we could come across a diamond lane on the way out here, but we didn't. You know, it's just down the 405, just like everybody else, and but I brought him anyway. And, and thank you for your talk. Roki's got sober in the same place I did at the San Fernando group, and we go to a 7 a.m. meeting in Studio City that meets every day of the year, called the Winner's Attitude Adjustment Group. And I love to hear Roki talk. He shares from the heart. But he started drinking when he was 13. And when I started hearing people saying that, I'd think, you know, I never really had a drink till I was 18. I don't know. I know why. When I look back at it, my grandmother was a Pentecostal minister. She had a Skid Row mission in San Pedro, and she used to help drunks to get sober on Jesus. You know, she'd bring them in there and feed them soup and Jesus, and they'd maybe get sober for a few days, and they'd go out, all these winos down on Skid Row in San Pedro, the wharf rats. And I met these guys, and they were not stupid. They were bright, charming people, articulate people, some of them, but they had thrown their lives away behind booze, and I just didn't want to have anything to do with that. So when my friends were drinking in high school, I just didn't drink with them. And I would go to the beer bus with them and stuff, and a lot of times I'd end up being the designated driver, but I had no interest in alcohol because I had things I wanted to accomplish in my life, and I could see that alcohol might get in the way of them. And it just didn't appeal to me. And I might not have ever started drinking, except that I had my friend Morris in high school. He was a couple months older than me, and he was kind of my sexual sponsor. You know, he'd give me advice. You know, and what he said to me one time, he said, you know, if you want to, I had this girlfriend, we'd go out and park and make out and stuff, and Morris said to me, if you want to get a home run with this girl, you're going to have to get her drunk. And I don't know if they even use those baseball terms anymore, but when I was in high school, they used to, you know, first base and second base and third base and home run, and I don't even remember where the bases are anymore. You know, but like I said, I'm married. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, step up to the plate and slide home. I mean, I never wonder if I'm going to get to second base tonight. But at the time, I remember home run though, and Morris said if you want to get a home run, you're going to have to get her drunk. So what I did was I went out and stole a quart of Rainier Ale. I don't want you to think this not drinking thing was a moral thing with me. It wasn't at all. I was perfectly happy to steal, and I went and stole a quart of Rainier Ale. That's what all my friends drank when it was the national beverage of Garden Grove when I grew up. So this girl and I went and parked this night, and but this time I got ammunition, you know. So I would have been happy. I still didn't care about drinking. I would have been happy to just pop it and hand it to her. Here, drink this. You know, let me know when you're ready. And we don't party tonight, but just, you know, it seemed kind of rude. So opened the bottle, and I took a drink, and I handed it to her, and she drank some. We passed it back and forth till it was gone. So, you know, and I'm not going to stand up here in an AA meeting and say, hey, half a quart of Rainier Ale will get you downtown, because we know about drinking, and make you sound like that, and you know, real drinking. Yeah. But if you're 18 years old and you never had a drink, half a quart of Rainier Ale would get your attention, and it got my attention, and so I was a little high, and I thought I was feeling good, you know. It made me feel good, and it made her feel good too. And my friend Morris was right. It was the first time I ever had sex in front of a witness. So, you know, I mean, it really changed my life. I took that girl home that night, and I thought, I'm going to do both these things as much as I can the rest of my life. And, did pretty good. But I drank for the next 24 years, and I had sex with anybody who would say yes, you know. And hi, Freedom. Got your attention, didn't I? and you know, so then I'm sitting in AA meetings, and people are saying I started drinking when I was 10. I started drinking when I was 13, and I thought, see, that's the difference. That's the difference. I never had a drink till I was 18. I was virtually a man when I started drinking. They started too young. That's why they need to be in here. You know, I don't. I heard people saying I came from an alcoholic family. And I looked at that. I said, seems to be some kind of genetic link to alcoholism. And I didn't come from any alcoholic family. My dad drank. I mean, but he was the kind of guy who would get a 6-pack of beer and drink one and put 5 in the refrigerator. And I got nothing against refrigerators, but I don't think it should get 5 and I should get 1. My dad would, you know, he'd be like a Saturday. He'd be watching a football game or working in the car or working in the yard, and he'd stop, you know, and have a beer and go back to what he was doing. I don't understand that. I never drank like, if I have a beer, that's what I'm doing, you know, and I drink it just because it's there, and if it's not there, I'll go get some more. And so I never understood the way my dad drank, and he never understood the way I drank. My mother, I don't know, we're not supposed to say if somebody else is an alcoholic, but I don't know if she's an alcoholic or not. You can't tell. She won't drink. You know, it's hard to tell. You watch them all day long. You know, character defect. You know, but maybe you're one. I asked her one time, "How come you don't ever drink? Are you an alcoholic?" And she said, "I don't know. Maybe." She said, "Yeah, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if I am, because when I was young, I used to drink, and every time I drank, I got sick, stupid, and obnoxious. So I just quit." I said, "Well, you got to drink through that, you know." You know, there's a promised land beyond sick, stupid, and obnoxious. But you know, I don't know. Besides, I figure if I get sick, stupid, and obnoxious, that's not my problem. That's your problem. But my mom just doesn't have the tenacity to make this program. My wife and I, after I got sober, and met my wife, and we got together, we went down to my sister's house in Orange County one time for dinner. There's 5 of us for dinner, and my sister made a pitcher of margaritas in the blender, and she knew we didn't drink, so you know, she didn't offer, of course, and she set out 3 glasses for the other people at the dinner, and she poured 3 glasses of margaritas, and there was another one left in the pitcher, and she poured it right in the sink. And my wife and I both went, "Ha!" I said, "What?" So, "How come you pour that in the sink?" She said, "What do you care? You're not going to drink." It's, you know, it's not about drinking. It's about respect, really. See, this is the place I wasn't going to fit. This is the only place I ever fit in my life. So my sister gets all paranoid, you know. She says, "Well, I don't know, maybe I want to use the blender again." My wife says, "It's a $40 item. It wouldn't kill you to have 2 blenders." They don't think like we do. And I'm visiting. I got another sister who lives in Wichita, and I was visiting her about 5 years ago, and I went back there actually to make some amends, and it was, it was a nice. We had a nice time together, and we had been estranged for a long time, and I to play with her kids and go to church with her. That's what she does. She's a Kansas school teacher, and she goes to church and sings in her choir and stuff. And I've never seen her take a drink in my life. And I said, Yvonne, do you drink? See, I'm real interested in this genetic link thing. And I said, do you ever? I mean, do you like go out with your friends and have a cocktail or anything? And she said, well, yeah. Actually, I'll have a glass of wine at midnight on New Year's. And I said, well, every New Year's, they call that pattern drinking. You you better watch it, I'm just kidding with her, and she says, well, not every New Year's. She gets all defensive. I said, why not? Well, if you're going to do it once a year, why not every year? And she said, well, I don't know. I always intend to, and then, it's New Year's, and the kids are running around making noise, and there's gunshots going off outside and everything, and sometimes I just forget. I just forget about my glass of wine, she said, and I wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't know. And I doubt that you would. I don't, if it was a condition of my sobriety that I was allowed to have one glass of wine at midnight on New Year's and only then, I certainly wouldn't forget. I mean, how could you? I mean, I'd be shopping wine in October. I don't know, the Merlot looks good, but come New Year's, I might want to have a Chablis. I better get them both. I'd be sharpening the corkscrew at Thanksgiving dinner. I'd be sitting watching the Rose Bowl going 364 days, But that's because I'm an alcoholic. Alcohol is very important to me. Very important. It still is. I walked in a liquor store about 6 months ago, went in there, and when I went in, the guy was on the phone. So I just started looking at my old friends on the wall, It's like, I know him, I know him, I know him. I love her, I was like, I saw this leader of Bushmills was sitting up on this top shelf, and they got those little square shoulders and the amber color, and there was dust on those pretty little square shoulders, It looked aged, I was just looking up there, and the sunlight was hitting that beautiful amber color just right. It's like looking at a picture of an old girlfriend. You say, yeah, you were a bitch at the end, but we had some times. So I'm looking at this bottle, and the guy hangs up the phone. He said, can I help you? I said, just a minute. There's no point in trying to explain to this guy what I'm doing. Geez, I haven't had a drink in 12 years, but just looking at the bottle right now. Leave me alone. Alcoholics Anonymous is the most fun I've had in my life. I mean, I have a lot of fun in Alcoholics Anonymous. I laugh a lot, and I hang out with people who laugh a lot. We get to come in here and laugh ourselves back into health, I don't know any other terminal disease that has that for a cure. And the book says we're not cured. We have a daily reprieve contingent on our spiritual condition. But I'm willing to keep that spiritual condition up. And I heard that when I was new, the spiritual condition thing and these steps, God this and higher power that, and I thought, oh man, I didn't believe in God when I got here. I was just, I don't know, a combination of education and LSD, I guess. I just didn't have any use for God, didn't believe in it, and I was kind of disappointed that Alcoholics Anonymous had all this God stuff going in it, and that's another reason it wasn't going to work. So I didn't believe in God. I didn't come from an alcoholic family, and I didn't start drinking too early, so that's why I wasn't going to fit here. But also I thought the fun was going to be over. And I think a lot of us do when we get here. It's like we drink for fun, even though sometimes it's not much fun. We just drink because we have to. But somehow it's, even though we're leading miserable lives, it seems like the fun's going to be over if we stop drinking. And that's just part of that disease. And I love in the Alcoholics Anonymous, in our big book, even in the little big book, it says in there on page 132, we're not a glum lot. It says we absolutely insist on enjoying life. Dr. Paul pointed out, show me any text, any medical textbook where it says that the cure for terminal disease is that we absolutely insist on enjoying life. That the steps that save our lives are only suggested, but we absolutely insist on enjoying life. It goes on to say, we think that cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. And why shouldn't we laugh? We've recovered and been given the power to help others. Why shouldn't we laugh? We've recovered and been given the power to help others. I guess Bill thought that was pretty goddamn funny, you know. and it is funny, you know. You come in here looking for help for your drunkenness, and the only people that can help you are drunks. You know, it's like, excuse me, does anybody have a degree or something in here? I'd really like to get some good help, you know. But we're supposed to laugh ourselves back into health. And then the next page after that, on page 133, it says, we found that God wants us. No, it says we're sure that God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. You know, we are happy and joyous and free. And I didn't even know if that was possible for me when I got here. Laugh an awful lot, you know. I was, I love this. I was talking at a meeting down on Crenshaw last Friday, and there was a guy there that took a cake for 4 years of sobriety, and he talked about his bottom. And he said when the night before he got sober, he was out at 2:30 in the morning in the rain trying to sell an ironing board. Now see, when I was new, if I'd heard him say that, I would have said, well, I never tried to sell an ironing board, you know. But I know that I know who that is. I know why he was trying to sell an ironing board. He needed to get a drink, and that's all he had. You know, I know if he had had a good belt or a new pair of socks, he would have sold that. But all he had was that goddamn ironing board, and out in the rain trying to sell. Hey, anybody, you know, want to buy an ironing board? And I told him, you know what? If you had gone out there and a miracle had happened and somebody came along and saw you selling that ironing board and said, thank God, you know, I've been looking all over for an ironing board. All the stores are closed. It's 2:30 in the morning. I need to iron my shirt before I go to work at 4. How much you want for that? I'll give you $20 for that ironing board. He still would have had $20, and it still would have been half an hour after you couldn't buy liquor, you know. But we try, you know. We're triers. And this is the place where I wasn't going to fit. I mean, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. When I was going to meetings, I started going to meetings because the only place that was telling me keep coming back. I mean, I had friends that were telling me, like Roki said, you know, Roki's parents said, we're having a barbecue, don't come. That's kind of, you know, that's kind of rude. Why don't they just not tell him, you know? But I guess they figured he'd find out, and you know, find out, and maybe there'll be a beer there. He might show up, and I was like them. I got an invitation to a wedding one time. My friends Bob and Carol were getting married, longtime friend Bob, and I got this engraved invitation. And I had said at the bottom RSVP and had a phone number, so I called up the number. Hello, I said, Bob, yeah, it's Doug. Hey, what's up, Doug? Hey, well, I just got your invitation to your wedding. Just wanted to RSVP. And he said, oh, I knew something's up. And he said, Doug, Carol asked me to ask you not to come to the wedding. Now, I believe that most people, almost anybody, if that happened to them, they'd say, what? What's wrong? You know, something, you guys not getting married, or you know, did you lose the place where you can get married at my house? You know, we'll get you a place. You know, I mean, what is it overcrowded? Did you over invite, or you know, something I did? But I didn't. He said, don't come to the wedding. I said, oh, okay, and I hung up because I knew why. We had been at a meeting a wedding a week before that, and they had an open bar. They shouldn't do that. They shouldn't do that. You know, you got a no-host bar, the son of a bitch might run out of money, you know, but they had an open bar, and I was drinking, and long story short, I ended up mooning the bride's mother, and some societies that's considered a social faux pas, and I was embarrassed about it the next day, but and I tried to justify it. You know, I thought it was the groom's mother. You know, that, you know, hey, come on, I didn't do it during the ceremony. I was at the reception. Jesus Christ, lighten up. But I guess, you know, Carol didn't want to take a chance. She liked her mother, you know. So, you know, so I was in a habit of not getting invited places. People weren't telling me to keep coming back, so I kept coming back. I was coming back to AA. Didn't think I was going to fit, and I didn't think this would work for me, and so I didn't actually stop drinking. But I was going to meetings, and I went to meetings just about every day. Didn't have any place better to go, but I was still drinking, and I didn't tell people I was drinking. I didn't want to offend them or anything. I just was going, and but I tried to be honest. They'd say anybody with less than 30 days of sobriety, Doug, alcoholic. Hi, Doug. You know, can we see the hands of anyone in their first 30 days of sobriety? Doug, alcoholic. You know, anybody with less than 30 days, Doug, alcoholic. Did this for a couple of months, and one day I was up at the San Fernando group, and somebody said, can we see the hands of anyone with less than 30 days of sobriety? And I started to raise my hand, but then I thought, you know, screw them. First place, it's none of their business, and in the second place, you know, if you're drinking every day, it's going to be a long time before you have 30 days. So I just didn't raise my hand that day. And this gal down at the end of the table said to her friend, Doug's got 30 days. And now I'm in trouble, because I didn't mean to deceive anybody, but you know, all of a sudden somebody thinks I have 30 days, and I didn't know how she knew my name. Doug alcoholic, Doug alcoholic, Doug, you know. Sometimes sober alcoholics will pay attention, and so she said I didn't know her name. It turned out her name was Crystal, but I didn't know that then, and I didn't want to embarrass her. She had red hair and large breasts, and you know, so what happened when they said anybody want to take a chip for 30 days, I figured I better do that. So I got up and took a chip, and boy, they went crazy. They were it's nothing, you know. Really, it's nothing. And thank you. And I sat down, and I was going home from that meeting. I used to think a lot on the way home from meetings, and I thought, I really made those people happy, you know. Haven't even stopped drinking, and I already made them happy. I think I'll go over to Chandler Lodge tomorrow morning and see what happens over there. I took a white chip over there, made them happy too. So now I got a sobriety date, 30 days before my first bogus chip, but I still haven't stopped drinking. So sometimes somebody would smell whiskey on me, or they'd see me drinking someplace. Then I knew I had to start over again, but only at the place where they smelled me, you know. Like, why start over someplace where they didn't think so? So by the time I actually got sober, I'd have 4 different sobriety dates at 4 different groups, and it's hard to keep track of it, you know, because there's like, you know, LA, there's 2,400 meetings, and you can hardly go to a meeting where you don't know somebody. I know Jennifer from a 7 a.m. meeting that Roki and I go to. I know Stan from the Valley, and I know Freedom from the Pacific group, you know, so. That's just this meeting. So that was happening all over. And I would start to get up and take a 90-day chip somewhere, and there'd be somebody who saw me take a 60-day chip somewhere else the day before, and I couldn't do it. And, you know, it's real tough. It's real hard keeping track of those sobriety dates and everything. And so, but what happened to me finally was I after going to AA for 8 months, taking bogus chips all over the place, and I was home one night, you know, and I didn't believe in God. I used to read chapter 4, We Agnostics. Used to read it over and over again, looking for how the smart people stay sober without God. And because I figured it's called We Agnostics, this is how the agnostics do it in AA. So I read that chapter, and I get done with that chapter and go, I missed something. I better pour another drink and read it again. And I don't know, I must have read it half a dozen times, looking for how the smart people stay sober without God, and it ain't in there. In fact, in the first paragraph it says, if when you honestly want to, you find you can't stop drinking entirely, or once you start you have little control over the amount you're taking, you're probably an alcoholic. And this be the case, you may be suffering from a disease which only a spiritual experience will conquer. Only a spiritual experience. That was such bad news, I ignored it. You know, I just went on reading to see how the smart people stay sober without God. But there's some great stuff in there. There's a part in that, there's a little sentence that I must have read, I don't know how many times, and it just didn't register for a long time. But it says, we found that God doesn't make too hard of terms on those who seek him. Well, I was openly hostile to organized religion of any kind when I got here. And what I thought that organized religion had taught me, my grandmother's church and any other church, was that God does make very hard terms on those who seek him. That you have to be baptized. Some people say total immersion, and some people say you just have to be sprinkled, and some people say you have to go to confession and take communion. Some people say you have to pray to Mecca 5 times a day. All these different organized religions were telling me all the way I perceived it, all these terms that God put on seeking him. And all of a sudden, there's this little information we found in AA. God doesn't make hard terms on those who seek him. And the finding seems to be just in the seeking. We're never going to understand God. We say God as you understand him. I heard somebody in AA say, understanding the infinite is not a requirement of the 3rd step. And that was good news. That let me off the hook. I don't have to understand the infinite. God as I understand him. However I believe God to be, that's what God can be to me. And that seems to be okay with God. And that's why Alcoholics Anonymous works. Because we don't make a lot of terms. But anyway, that was a beautiful part of that. And there's another part in there that talked about me. It said to choose between an alcoholic death and a spiritual way of life is not an easy decision. Talking about us. You know, most people don't have a problem with that decision. Alcoholic death, spiritual way of life. You know, see, this is Alcoholics Anonymous, so we go, yeah, that's right. Try it on those folks out there. Get yourself a clipboard. Go stand in front of Stater Brothers sometimes. Stop people when they're coming out, you know. It's like, excuse me, I'm taking a survey. Would you rather die an alcoholic death or live a spiritual way of life? So, you know, most people go, what? What? You say alcoholic death, you're talking about when you puff up and turn yellow and your esophagus erupts and you choke to death on your own blood and vomit, that kind of alcoholic death? Well, yeah, you know, after you lose everything, yeah, you know, not so quick. And, you know, I mean, most people just won't have a hard time with that decision. They go get in that long line, you know. I don't even know what a spiritual experience is, but I'll go get over there. And, but you know you got an alcoholic if you do the alcoholic death spiritual way of life, and they go, wow. Are you going to be here tomorrow? You know, can't make up my mind. Tell them, listen, what are you doing Sunday night? Would you come over to Marina Center with me? You know, but that's who we are. We can't choose between an alcoholic death and a spiritual way of life because alcohol is so important to us. And one night after going to AA for 8 months, drinking every day, hearing stuff, trying not to identify. I was home one night, I had a 5th of whiskey and I drank about half of it. I passed out on my living room floor, woke up about 3 a.m. and I got my bottle, my half-full bottle, and crawled across the living room floor on my hands and knees, through the hallway into my bedroom. That's the way I went to bed. Some people call that pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I just call it going to bed, and seemed kind of smart, you know, can't fall off the floor. And I was going to bed, and I got in my bedroom, stood up with a bottle in my hand to take my clothes off, and I lost my balance, and I fell on my knees next to the bed and spilled the whiskey all over the bed. And I picked up the bottle real quick. There was about this much left. And I set the bottle down, and I looked at this bedspread with this alcohol soaking into it, and I grabbed it, and I started sucking the whiskey out of this bedspread. Just sucking for all I was worth, like a vacuum cleaner, you know, and it's like I stood outside of myself, fully sober for a second, and looked at myself, sucking whiskey out of a bedspread, and I thought, what is wrong with you? You know, I knew that I was just like those guys at my grandmother's mission. The only difference was I had a bedspread. And I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know what to do about it. I've been going to AA for 8 months, and I had no idea what to do about my drinking. And I never felt so lost in my entire life. Felt absolutely lost and desperate. And what I did was, Out of desperation, I said, God, if you're there, please help me. And I meant it. I meant it. But I didn't think anybody was listening. It's not all of a sudden I had an epiphany and believed in God. I just said it because I didn't know what else to do. I went to bed and I went to sleep, and over the next couple of weeks, every day, I'd go into a liquor store to get some booze. There'd be somebody from AA behind the counter of the liquor store. Hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? You know, and I go in the Vaughn's Market next to my house and start in the liquor department. Reach up for a bottle of somebody from AA pushing a cart towards me. Hey, one day at a time, keep it simple. You know, isn't it a beautiful life? And in a restaurant, I'd start to order a drink. The waitress would be somebody from AA. You know, everywhere I went, there was people from AA there. And one day I was just on the way to work, and I had killed a half pint on the way to work, and I didn't keep open containers in my car that were empty. So I'm not going to get a ticket for an open container if it doesn't have any booze in it. And so I pulled over to the side of the road, rolled down the window. A guy from AA drove by. He waved at me. I threw a bottle out the window. And what the hell is, you know, everywhere I go, it's like somebody from AA. Oh, who do you have to know to get a drink in this town, you know? I said, you know, it's like those miracles they talk about in meetings. And the minute I thought the word miracle, it was like I could hear God laughing. And I remembered then that I had been on my knees and said, God, if you're there, please help me. I mean, it just came to me. I realized, and then I did have an epiphany. That's the moment that I came to, I realized I had asked for God for help. God helped me. And there it was. I could take it or leave it. And, you know, I also know that if I had heard somebody say what I just said, the day before it happened to me, I would have said, well, it's interesting coincidences. I don't know if it's a miracle, but it was a miracle to me, and I believe it was a miracle. It was the beginning of my sobriety. It was my second step, really. I didn't know that at the time, but it's the moment that I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. And that was my problem with the second step, not admitting that I was insane. I had no problem with that. The problem was that there was some power greater than myself that could help me with it. And that was the moment that I came to believe. It was the beginning of my sobriety. And I was going to meetings then differently, sober. And I had to go to these places where I had these bogus sobriety dates and tell them that I had been lying to them. And I thought, maybe they'll throw me out of AA. We can't trust you anymore. And, you know, this is a backward society. You come in here and say, you know what, I've been lying to you. And they put their arms around you and say, that's all right, you know, come on in, you know. And they trust you more if you tell them you've been lying to them. I don't know. We're backwards from other places. And I started to hear the music of AA. Started to hear the music, because sometimes the words don't make sense. You know, they say things like give it away to keep it and surrender to win and all these things that don't make sense to us. One guy says, the road gets narrower, and then you read the book, it says, join us on the broad highway. You know, it's real confusing, because that's the lyrics. You know, you hear the lyrics, and the lyrics don't make any sense. You have to set them to the music. I took my first honest 30-day chip over at the Burbank group on a Thursday night when they do chips and cakes, and when I had 30 days actual sobriety, and I wanted to get this chip. It wasn't about chips. I had enough chips to open a casino by then, but it was a real one. I really had 30 days of sobriety. I went up there and took my 30-day chip. People clapped just like they did before. But I felt clean. I felt like I was a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. I sat down and people got up and took 60 and 90 and 6 months and 9 months. People took cakes, and then they had a coffee break like they did here tonight. And I started to go get my coffee, and a guy came up and said, hey, congratulations on that 30 days. I said, thank you. And he said, you know what the secret is? And I said, you know, I can't say that I do. I don't know what the secret is, really. Don't drink. And he said, just hang on. Just hang on for all you got, man. You know, you got 30, pretty soon another 30, you'll have 60. Just hang on. I said, okay. And now I know the secret, you know. And so I started to go get my coffee, and this guy, other guy came up to me. Jim B is one of these glad-handed, backslapping alcoholics that came up to me and said, son, congratulations on that white chip. I said, thanks. And he said, you know what the secret is? I said, yes, sir, hang on. And he said, no, let go. You know, I mean, and they're both right. You got to hang on and you got to let go. But it's confusing when you're new. That's the lyrics. You got to set those lyrics to music, because I believe there's a rhythm and a harmony and a melody that run through this thing that you start to hear, and it makes all the lyrics start to make sense. You know, that chapter 5 that they read at most meetings that Troy read so beautifully tonight. Thank you. Good reading, Troy. And we have your agent's number. And but it talks a lot about honesty in that chapter 5. You know, rigorous honesty. Those who don't recover seem to be constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. And so I figured honesty has got a lot to do with this. You know, maybe I'll just work on this thing and not drink, and pretty soon I'll be incapable of telling a lie. And that seemed like something to achieve. I haven't achieved it yet. I'm 12 and a half years sober. I mean, sometimes I'll just lie, and you know, I'd like to tell you otherwise, but it doesn't seem to make me have to drink. You know, the thing is, I'm pretty honest. I'm honest with myself, and I'm honest with my sponsor most of the time. Well, okay. My sponsor, I had a fight with my wife, you know, and I called my sponsor, I'm bitching her, you know, because I was right. And my sponsor said, well, would you rather be right or happy? I just lied. I said, yeah, happy, you know. Because the fact is, nothing makes me happier than being right. But I took his advice, and the fight was over, and, you know, and so that's the kind of lie I'm talking about. My wife says to me, honey, does this dress make me look fat? Rigorous honesty, yeah. Rigorous honesty. No, honey, I think it ain't the dress. I think it's that goddamn Haagen-Dazs you're chugging down, you know. That, you know. Put away that chocolate ice cream for a while. I think, you know, that dress would look fine on you. Let's go put it on the skinny girl across the street, see what it looks like, you know. You know. So I'm, you know, rigorous honesty, lyrics. I'm out with my sponsor, and I are having dinner in Palm Springs, a nice restaurant in Palm Springs, and the waiter comes up and says, looks at me and says, sir, would you like a cocktail before dinner? You know, and I lied to him. I said, oh, no, thank you. This is a long story, you know. I mean, if I had to be rigorously honest, I'd say, boy, I'd like a cocktail more than dinner, you know. Bring me a cocktail, you don't even have to bring the dinner. Just keep them coming. I'm a big tipper. I mean, you know, but I have this disease. It's a kind of a mental obsession coupled with a physical allergy and spiritual bankruptcy. You don't want that in your nice restaurant, do you, boy? I mean, you know, if I were rigorously honest with a guy, he'd probably, you know, back off. No, that's all right. Don't worry about the tip. In fact, I'm off. I'm off right now, you know. So, that's the lyrics. I heard a woman, when I got sober, I heard a woman say, see, let me tell you something. If you're new, you will hear people with quantity sobriety and quality sobriety. I don't mean quantity over quality. People with good long-term sobriety misquote the big book from podiums. They don't mean to. We don't. I may have done it tonight, but it's just an accident, you know. So the good way to test that is to actually read the book, because they always stay the same in there. They seem to change sometimes, but they always really stay the same. But I heard a woman say from a podium, and I'm paying attention because I'm sober now. I want to do everything I can to stay sober and lock this thing in. And I heard a woman say, our book says that our drinking was a symptom of deeper underlying causes and conditions. Well, it does. It says exactly that. But then she went on to add her own stuff. She said, and if you don't find your deeper underlying cause and condition, you will drink again. And I thought, I have no clue what my deeper underlying cause and condition is. And I was scared. I was scared. I felt hopeless. I didn't have a bad childhood. I could have if I'd been born into some other family, but I was born into this loving, hard-working, happy, non-alcoholic family, and I just had a great childhood. It was long. It was like 42 years, you know, but it wasn't bad. And I started looking over my life to see whose fault it was, you know. It was an alcohol, and I thought, when I was 24 years old, I went to see a show called Hair. It was playing at the Aquarius Theater in Hollywood. I went to see this. I was tripping on acid, and there was like, it was all about hippies singing and dancing, and you know, and free sex and free drugs and all this stuff. It was just beautiful, and there was a guy named Culver, a character called Culver, that swung on a rope and went out in the audience, spirit changing the audience and insulting people. I said, I could do that. And so the next day I called up the Aquarius Theater and set up an audition to come and do that show, see if I could get in the show. And they gave me an audition date. So the day I was supposed to audition, I was home practicing my guitar and thinking, you know, if I sang good enough, maybe I wouldn't have to dance. This is a Broadway show, you know, it's a dancing show, but maybe I'd sing good enough, they'd just say, oh, you don't even have to dance. And so I was practicing the song, and I broke a string on my guitar. And, you know, hippies were like, oh, bad karma, dude. And so I went into my roommate's room to see if he had the string I broke, and he had it. It was a D string in an envelope laying right in the middle of his dresser. I said, cool. Picked it up, and right underneath it, there was a little white capsule. And I wonder what that is. Oh, we didn't have a PDR. You pretty much had to swallow test everything, you know. Somebody died, you'd say, don't eat the green shit. And so what it was THC, it's synthetic marijuana, but a nice little psychedelic. And so when I got down to the Aquarius Theater about 45 minutes later to do my audition, I just floated in there. You know, I just floated. My hair was long over my shoulders, you know, and it just swished when I walked, and I had bell bottoms about this big on, you know, hip huggers, and they moved when I walked, and I had no shirt, just a vest with 6 layers of red, white, and blue foot-long leather fringe. I was like a walking wind chime, you know. and walked in, 24 years old, just starting to make my mark, and I gave my music to the piano player, and he started playing, bum, 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 bum. I said, wow, I feel good. And I was not lying. That's your rigorous honesty, you know. I felt very good, and I sang the song, and I could see them nudging each other. This kid can sing, and so they said, sing something else. I didn't have anything else prepared, but I went over to the piano player. We talked out some chords. I did Otis Redding's Dock of the Bay. You know, I made myself cry, you know. Looks like nothing's gonna change, you know. Like, oh man, and they loved it. They said, and they said, okay, well, we just want to see you dance. So I said, hit it. The piano player started playing. I started moving, and my hair is coming around. and I'm moving. The fringe on this vest starts going. And I heard somebody say, Jesus, can he dance? And I thought, here we go. So they hired me. Hired me to go to Las Vegas to play this lead role. And did 6 months in Las Vegas, and then we left Las Vegas and went out on tour, and I was 3 years on the road, and we'd go to these different places, and they'd, you know, we'd open up, and people would come up on stage afterwards with tears in their eyes. You were so beautiful, man. Have some pot, dude. It's sense of me, and you know, it's Maui Wowie, it's Panama Red. Oh, cool, thanks. And have some acid, brother. Osley, Purple Haze, Orange Sunshine. Oh, cool. You know, it's like they give us have some Peruvian Flake. Oh, cool. Some girl would come up. I love you. Have me. Okay. You know. And it was like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, traveling around the country and getting paid for it. It was a pretty good job, really. But I'm looking back at this from sobriety and saying, they made me into a drug addict. They made me into an alcoholic. I called my sponsor. I said, I found it. What'd you find? I found my deeper underlying cause and condition. He said, okay, let's hear it. You know how sponsors do. Sponsors speak. Let's hear it. Hair. He said, Doug, if your hair's a problem, cut it off. You know, it's not important. No. You know that show I told you I was in, you know, when I used to be a star and everything? And he said, yeah. Oh, yeah, that hair. He said, I thought you were loaded when you auditioned for that show. Yeah? He said, see, here's the deal. Most people, when they go to interview for a job they really want, usually won't take a drug they can't identify. It's kind of alcoholic behavior. Oh. Yeah, and I can see his point. You know, I said, and I don't know what my deeper underlying causing condition. He said, don't worry, neither do I. A lot of us don't, you know. Maybe you'll find it, maybe you won't. If you want to look for it, fine, I'll give you something to do between meetings, you know, but just keep going to meetings and don't drink, read the big book. Can't read a page, or if you can't read a chapter, read a page. If you can't read a page, read a paragraph, call me tomorrow. Click. And so that's what I was doing, and I never did find my deeper underlying causing condition. Finally settled on trauma from circumcision. I don't know. If it happened to me today, I'd be a little restless, irritable, and discontent. Look, I don't know if I said anything that's going to help anybody tonight. It helped me. It was fun to be here. I'm delighted to do this. And people don't get saved from people at the podium anyway. People get saved by people who notice somebody new in the room and go up and say, keep coming back. People get saved more often by a coffee maker than a speaker at a meeting, you know. I wanted to do this because I thought the speaker was real important, and the speaker isn't important. What the speaker is a sideshow barker, you know, that stands outside the actual show and says, hey, come on in and see the woman who got her family back. Come on and see the man who got his driver's license back, you know. So it was fun for me to be the carnival barker tonight, and I don't know if I said anything important, but I said it for long enough. Thanks for letting me share.